The Fantasmagorium show is proud to present Money, Murder, and Minnesota, a retrospective and review of all things Fargo. A new season of Fargo is imminent, and we are here to celebrate those sordid tales. Tonight, we are discussing the film that started it all, 1996's Coen Brothers Fargo. It's kind of funny looking. Kat is here. I am Scotty R37. I was going to say I was George C. Scott, but I figured that was offside for the memory of George C. Scott. And Steve is making us eggs, fixing us some eggs. How you doing, Kat? it's been a hot minute since we've been hanging out talking about movies. What's going on?
Good. Just been building my physical collection. Just got Prey. That's formerly streaming exclusive, so big one for physical media. Just kind of trying to figure out where I'm gonna put all my physical media because you run out of space. I admit I have to catalog certain type of titles, like which ones do I want to get physical versus which one digital. But yeah, it's been good.
Good. I just started. It's funny that you bring it up because I just started doing like an inventory of my physical media just to find out what I have, because I found myself going to my local shop and picking up stuff, and then I'd come home and it's like, why do I have another copy of The Island? And it's just like, because I just wanted it. I don't need 3 copies of RoboCop 2, but I want it all the time. So it's interesting. I'm up to like 630 something, and I'm almost done. But like, it's like, yay, what a library. So I'm glad that we're celebrating the physical media. This is actually how I watched Fargo today. I didn't stream it. It was only on DVD, but it was the MGM special edition that has no extras. But yeah, I watched it this afternoon, and wow, Coen Brothers make good movies. Hey, see, there you go. What do you got on that for special features?
There's an audio commentary with cinematographer Roger Deakins, who of course has gone on to have an amazing career. A trivia track, a still photo gallery, one featurette, and the article, a digital version of the article from American Cinematographer. It's a magazine that I subscribe to. But I cheated. I watched it on the 4K digital transfer because, to my knowledge, this does not have a 4K physical release yet, which I can't figure out.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't win Best Picture, but it was super popular, and but I still watched it. I watched the 4K transfer, and it's like, wow, very good transfer.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up because I just was like, well, there should be like a 4K box set or something. But this is by Polygram Video, same studio that did Lebowski. I'm not 100% on the other. I know Universal was also involved with the Coen Brothers.
This was a co-American British production.
Oh, okay.
The other one was another boutique. It wasn't one of the major studios. It was, let's see, I got it right here. It was, let's say, Polygram and Working Title Films are the production companies, distributed by Gramercy Pictures in the United States and then Polygram in the UK.
Okay.
So I don't know. You mentioned Universal. Maybe they got the rights later on. I'm not sure, but
again, it's a matter of just discussing the entire filmography of the Coen Brothers and which studios they worked with. Like, I'm even like Raising Arizona, I want to say is a Touchstone picture, but I could be very wrong. Tell me in the chat if I'm wrong. I know people love telling me I'm wrong in the chat. But it is a really paced, interesting. Is it a noir?
I mean, it's a crime movie. I don't know if I'd call it noir, because usually noir, it's a lot darker, and the villains get away, or there's a femme fatale, and none of which is really here. So,
well, I don't know. Did you want to do a rundown of the plot, or
I'll tell you. I'll start actually from the beginning. I first heard about this movie when, not long after it came out, and adults would always be talking about it, particularly like the wood chipper scene, or they'd be talking about the culture. Oh yeah, you betcha, that kind of thing, and how it was so new to them. And it just seemed like this kind of enigma. It's like, it's the movie I had to see. It sounded too amazing, but I didn't see it until years later. And by then I'd seen a bunch of other films of around the same time, and I was surprised, or I kind of noted that, people talked a lot about Fargo, at least in the circles I was in, but nobody around that era was talking about like Seven, which really was even darker and more grotesque and even more of a bad ending to it. But so I thought that was kind of noteworthy. Okay, I know what the more or less conservative middle class adults are watching Fargo, as other people are watching this other types of films. So I guess because I built it up in my head when I first saw it, it didn't strike me as much. I'm like, oh, okay, because I'd seen other Coen Brothers films at that by that time, but I still think it's really funny, especially Steve Buscemi. I think it's notable that the heroine doesn't show up until a third of the way into the film, and I get that the whole this is based on a true or this is a true story was the Coens' way of getting license with the audience or sort of permission from the audience to do things that are unorthodox in a narrative of this nature, such as scenes that don't seem to have any other relevance to the film being in there just for the purpose of character development or just to show off the character and the character of the whole society, if you will. And the hero not really being there to catch the villain, or she kind of does, and that type of stuff. And people didn't really understand that back then and kept insisting it was a true story. Apparently, the only thing people could find close to it was a similar scam that a guy in, I think, Connecticut had tried to pull off in 1987, which is why they set the movie in 1987. But yeah, so the plot is this guy played by
well, and before you get into the plot, just like there is something that is breathtaking about those character moments. When we've talked about movies, like I was going to say, oh, we have a strong female protagonist, so we should bring Margie up whenever we want to talk about strong female protagonists. But like, this is very much a character-driven crime movie. And also being in 1996, maybe feeling a little of the influence of Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. I don't know if I'm mixing my peas and carrots. But like, there was sort of a 90s crime movie that had been going on, obviously with, oh heavens, what's the name of Miller's Crossing, with Buscemi as well, and John Turturro and Gabriel Byrne. But the Coens had always sort of dabbled in crime stories. Heck, Raising Arizona is still a crime story, but they're all character driven, and you follow the characters more than you follow the intrigue of the crime, although that is incidental. I just found it very real, and I enjoyed it, even in its sort of Coen-esque universe. Really, really enjoyed it. And oh, by the way, before we go any further, why Minnesota and not North Dakota is the name of our podcast? Why is it not Money, Murder, and North Dakota?
Because much like the film and the TV series, in the movie, the only scene that takes place in Fargo is the opening scene. And Fargo is not even mentioned as having anything or the culture, anything to do with the rest of the film. And in the TV series, like excluding season 4, because that pretty much takes place entirely in St. Louis, the first 3 seasons are pretty much 95%, 98% in Minnesota. And then there'll be a few scenes in North Dakota in season 1, and then like one scene in season 3. I don't think there was any in season 2, but they just called it Fargo because that was I guess because it might be because Fargo is, I guess, it's a city, but it's out there in that very isolated region, more isolated than the Twin Cities are in Minnesota. So you get more of that type of Minnesota nice culture out there, even though it's right across, because Fargo's right on the border of North Dakota, Minnesota. So it's not like there's a complete different cultural shift between the two sides. And so when you're talking about the region in general, it's like, oh, people would say, oh yeah, up in Fargo or that kind of area. It didn't really, it doesn't really have any much of a big bearing on the story or the series. But and then it's the 3 M's: Money, Murder, Minnesota.
Alliteration, yeah.
That alliteration too. And then because it's also, again, it's called Minnesota Nice, not Fargo Nice or Nordak Nice.
I do want to say hello to the chat. Hello to Irene Jobson. I was going to say Jacobson. I feel like I'm playing Golden Tee. Sorry, Irene. Irene Jobson is here.
Yes, hello again.
Stay the Course is here. Pleasant Valley Picker, ahoy, sir, is here. And it's great to see you guys. Irene is here under the cover of Bookshelves. And hey,
as am I.
There we go. Irene, wait, I love Cat. I'm glad that I didn't put you off, Irene.
Yes, hello. Yes, we were on a stream a few days ago.
Irene says, ooh, that's an odd question to ask. Physical versus digital. Which do you prefer?
Well, physical, because you don't get the compression artifacts. There's no lag of, like, internet has it. Admittedly, now that I got much faster internet, that rarely happens. But the thing I like about physical is I know exactly where it is. I can pull it whenever I want to. I admittedly have a very large digital collection, but it takes a while to cycle through it because it doesn't have the simple search bar. It's not, that kind of thing. Plus, digital can be broken up over multiple services, and Granted, if it comes to something like a major studio, I would imagine that they would keep their agreements with things like Voodoo because it's easy money. You know, people renting it, it's like the cheapest thing ever, since they don't have to advertise for anything. But physical is always better, except, you know, the inevitability that you start running out of space.
Irene would like to let us all know that she's also never committed a real crime. Have you ever committed a crime?
No, but
No,
you know,
don't answer. Don't say yes.
What's a real crime as opposed to a fake crime is what I want to know.
Well, I've done lots of fake crimes. It's like my fake businesses. And where was Twin Peaks filmed? Do you know?
No, but I can check.
I thought that was like the Pacific Northwest.
I think that's Pacific Northwest, I think.
And then Alicia Silverstone or whatever. But thank you for being here, everyone. Appreciate it. You were okay. So when was the first time that you did say you saw it years after, and did you see it in the theater? Have you seen this in the theater?
No. And I don't remember how I first saw it either, whether it was on TV or whether it was it might have been from, I can't remember where I got this Blu-ray either. It might have come from Deep Discount DVDs, which also sells Blu-rays. I might have found it in a dollar bin or something at Walmart, or, I can't remember where, but I most certainly had already seen the movie before I got the Blu-ray. And I probably got the Blu-ray again after I had seen the first season of the TV show, and I was just enthused to go back and watch the movie again. And so I just now watched it, just finished watching it right before the stream.
Not first time, though.
No, of course not. I've seen it.
You know what? It was first time for me. First time front to back.
Really?
If it is the second time, it's because the first time was way back on VHS.
Yeah.
But like, I think this is one of the first or second time I've actually seen it front to back. And again, so atmospheric and so engaging. Like it's so pleasant to sort of engage with a film and laugh out loud and be touched by it, especially through the performance of Frances McDormand.
Yeah, I'd say that Steve Buscemi's character, Carl Showalter, is my favorite character in the movie. He's the most animated. He's the funniest. He's kind of driving all the action in the story for the most part. Yeah, and William H. Macy is kind of funny as Jerry. Yeah, kind of stuff. And you have, John Carroll Lynch is the totally muted husband of Francis's character. Yeah, so it's interesting because this movie, again, everybody talks about it's iconic. It's, obviously not the Coens' breakout film. That was their first one, Blood Simple, but this is probably the one that got them even bigger mainstream success.
Oscars do that, yeah.
Yeah, Oscars as well do that. But watching this movie, I don't know if it's the pacing or just the fact that because it's only 94 minutes that they have to get through the plot kind of fast. I never really felt any sense of suspense or excitement while watching it. It's like, yeah, this is funny, the culture, it's very new and unique and different and all that. But I never felt like the type of excitement or trepidation or suspense that you feel going into a climax. It's like the whole movie feels very much the same, whether it's in the first act or the second act or the third act. And it's like, I'm watching the story, I'm invested in it. I was like, okay, we're not fully invested in it. Like, I honestly didn't. The wife was such a paper thin character. I should have cared if she survived, but I didn't. Like, when she's sitting there in the room and she sees the burglar or whatever come up to the window in a ski mask with a crowbar looking around, and she just kind of sits there watching him, not like the least bit bothered until he smashes the glass. I'm like, what are you doing, lady? So you have weird things like that, but something about it, it's like, okay, I enjoyed it. It's a good story, very well done script in terms of the dialogue, really sharp-witted dialogue, but it never really grabbed me in that way that it did so many other people. Like, I'm looking right now on here, and it says it's got critic rating of 94%, audience rating of 92%. I wouldn't put it that high, but I still liked it.
I don't want to ask you if it's better than The Godfather.
It is.
It is better than The Godfather. Okay, we got something going.
I'm trying to enjoy that. I told you, The Godfather's, but we'll review that some other time. I'm not.
We will. But and again, it's a tight run time, and it's good. Like, and should
I tell people what the plot of the movie is in case they're lost?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Right.
So the plot is William H. Macy is a car salesman, and he's constantly being, insulted or whatever by his father-in-law, who's a big executive guy. And, you could tell he never has to actually say it. You could tell that he hates that his daughter married this guy. He comes over, has dinner at their house occasionally. He doesn't like the way that they're raising their son. And, he totally feels, emasculated by this guy. And he takes like a real estate deal to him at one point, and they only want to give him a finder's fee. And admittedly, I could get more in Jerry's corner if it was a sensible deal, but I have to agree. Well, you expect him to just loan you $750,000, and then maybe this pays off in many, many years' time. When it's like you're a car salesman, your real estate isn't really your thing, even though it's kind of a good thing. But yes, you discovered a good deal, but is it worth that much? Not really. So that kind of pisses off Jerry even more. And so he decides that to get out from under his father-in-law's thumb and to really make his life better, that he is going to pay these two criminals who he's been put in contact with by a mechanic at the shop, to pay them basically to kidnap his wife. And he'll pay them by way of the ransom, because he knows his father-in-law will pay the ransom because he's got the money for it. They agree on $80,000. They're going to split it halfway. And the thieves are two bumbling idiots played by Steve Buscemi and Peter Stormare. And Peter Stormare's character is great because he barely says anything the whole movie, and seems almost like he's stoned or passed out the entire time. Yet he's the most vicious between the two of them, probably, and most cold-blooded. And just how disconnected from everybody and everything that he is. Like, I can't even figure how he and Carl ever became partners for this kind of scam, but we do know that it's through Gower, I think it's Gower, however his first name is pronounced. The Peter Stormare character, he's the one who's friends with the mechanic Shep at the dealership that put this thing together. And so this seems like a simple plan, but we could tell from the opening scene when Jerry goes to meet him at the bar that this is going to go sideways in 2 seconds.
Well, it's so amazing because no matter what plan Jerry comes up with, everyone tells him all of his plans are bad. Like at every turn, everyone is telling him this is a bad idea. I don't even know what his ultimate motivations are.
Well,
like,
even
money, I guess.
Even Steve Buscemi tells him that in the opening scene. It's like, this doesn't really make a lot of sense, Carl. Like, how are you going to get away with this? And another issue that's never addressed is, what was Jerry's plan to hide the money from his wife and father-in-law? Because he ends up escalating to where initially it's going to be 80, but his scam was going to be, he'd tell his father-in-law that the ransom is $1 million. He'd tell the thieves it's only going to be 80, so he would pocket $960,000. But how are you going to hide that money from? Because that doesn't really track. At one point, he tries to call off the kidnapping because he thought he was going to get a big fee from this. And then there was no real plan for how he was going to get away with that one either. And then there's the other guy who's pestering him from the insurance company about, I need to know these cars are real because you're wanting me to post a collateral against it, but I need to know the cars are real. I'm sure they are, and that guy just keeps pestering him throughout the movie as well. And Jerry you're right, he's not a very smart guy. He doesn't really think things through, and it isn't clear what the motivation is, because again, if you don't have a way to launder the money in a way that's going to be believable to your wife and your father-in-law, then how is this going to work? It's like there's and nobody brings that up in the course of the story. But I agree, Pleasant Valley Picker. Yes, simple plans in crime films almost always go south. Absolutely, even in the movie, a simple plan.
And I suppose what he wants to do is buy the acreage that he heard about, and then it'll turn around, and that'll make him a bunch of money. But you're absolutely right. Like, so he gets the money, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Jerry, where did you get the money to get that acreage? And it's like, well, he has no answer to this. There's no end game. He's a dim, stupid, hapless man.
Yes, he is, and that's part of what makes it work, and it's really quite funny. But the first way the plan goes sideways is that the thieves they succeed in kidnapping the wife, but they get pulled over because Jerry decided to supply them a vehicle because he thought he was being smart by, we don't want the vehicle to get traced. It's like, okay, initially that's good thinking. Problem is, it still has the dealer plates on them. They get pulled over by a state trooper who sees the victim in the back seat squirming, and so Geyer, again, I can't pronounce his name. I'm just calling him the actor's name, Peter Stormare.
Yeah, Peter Stormare.
He kills him. Some passersby drive by and see it, and so he chases down. He rams the car off the road, and then while the driver's fleeing into the field, he shoots him dead. And he looks inside the car and sees this little girl in there, and she's like breathing kind of heavily. And he just sees her, and it's the only time he shows any sense of human connection or remorse, where he doesn't want to look at her when he shoots her. He consciously turns away, but he shoots her dead anyhow. And then they take off, and this eventually causes Carl to get upset and call Jerry and say, "We're going to keep all the ransom money now. This is getting big. This is bigger when 3 people are dead." And Jerry's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, tell those 3 people you're going to give us all the fucking money now." And it seems to be that's what gave Jerry the idea to up the ransom. Maybe he was going to up it to begin with anyhow, but that's like, Jerry's like, "Oh shit," he didn't really plan for this. And it's around this time, about half hour into the film, 33 minutes or so, that we meet Marge. And she's 7 months pregnant. Again, she's living with her husband, he designs stamps, and he's a very, okay, kind of, we don't know what else he does. He's kind of most of the time like a postal worker. She goes to investigate the crime, and she's able to figure out that the car used dealer plates and got pulled over for that reason.
But also, I thought that this was something that I didn't realize before, is that it is sort of a juxtaposition of a husband and wife with Jerry and Jean, and Jerry wants more at the expense of his wife. Mm-hmm. And Marge and her husband,
Norm.
It's a story of Norm. It's a wife and a husband, where the husband he's like the stay-at-home husband, expecting their first child, I assume, and because there are no other children in the film. But it's a loving relationship, even in the, like, I don't want to say boredom, but just the routine of being in a relationship, and they're happy together, even in that mundane comfort. And I thought that was sort of a touching juxtaposition, with Jerry wanting more and Norm and Marge being happy.
Yeah, like when she gets a call in the middle of the night, she has to go to work, and he immediately insists he's going to get up and make her eggs. He doesn't care. He's rather stay in bed. And same when she goes out to start the car, he's sitting there kind of eating breakfast in his pajamas, and she's like, "Oh, the car needs a jump." He gets up, no hesitation, he's going to do it. Whereas Jerry, it's like, he's just, again, we're not really clear what his motivation is, but you're right, he does things at the expense of other people all the time. And so that's and his plans don't even work out, because the mechanic, Shep, we find out, is on parole. And so once this plan starts going sideways, he's starting to get harassed by the police. And so that pisses him off, and he goes and attacks Carl in a rather hilarious scene, where he just whips him with his own belt, which is kind of funny and messed up. But yeah, it's like, it's a movie also where they have scenes which seemingly don't have any purpose in the film. Like when Marge gets a call from her old high school friend who wants to meet, and she meets him, Mike Yanagita, the restaurant, and he's kind of hitting on her, and she's kind of politely declining. Yeah, and he explains that, "Oh yeah, my wife died, we were married," all this kind of stuff. He tells this whole story, and she kind of wants to get out of it because she feels he's kind of weird, but she thinks he's still really nice and trustworthy. And it's just, and then he leaves, and then it's not brought up again until like 25 minutes later or so, when she's talking to a friend who's like, "Oh yeah, that guy, he was never married. What are you talking about? He's kind of mental, or he's kind of off." And
yeah. No, they were never married, Margie. He just wouldn't leave her alone.
Yeah, he's just like, sort of the way he was harassing her at the restaurant. And it's funny because I heard Noah Hawley, the showrunner on the TV series, talk about this, and he said that was something that he loved, was that it was a scene that didn't seem to have any purpose to exist in the film. It's just because, every even in the season, every show, he says, has what he calls his Mike Yanagita, where you just have something in there for the purpose of dramatization of character. Now, I would argue that it does have a purpose, because when Marge first goes to see Jerry at the dealership, she doesn't suspect any criminal wrongdoing on him. She just thinks, okay, somebody either stole the car, or maybe there was like a clerical error and you didn't notice that the car was missing. But she doesn't think for a second that he would be lying, because he's a respectable person. Whereas, of course, she's critical of Shep, the mechanic, because, he's got a record and that kind of thing. And she's critical at the crime scene because it's a crime scene, and she's got the common sense to piece it together, whereas her partner didn't. Whereas with, Jerry, he's respectable. I can't think that. Same with Mike. He was a respectable guy. Yeah, a little weird, but she didn't think there was anything untoward about it. And so once her friend tells her that, Mike's kind of nuts, that kind of gives her pause to go back to talk to Jerry, because she's the type of person who thinks the best in everyone. As we see at the end of the movie, she can't fathom why these criminals would do all of this just for money, because again, like you said, she has happiness in the mundane and the routine, and she just has no concept of how that's not enough for some people, that they want to get the hell out of here or whatever. And so I think that was because her friend, who she trusts a lot more, and because of her noticing that Mike was a little off, it was because her friend told her the truth about Mike that she's like, maybe I shouldn't trust Jerry. Maybe I should go back and harass him a bit more, which she does, and it works because Jerry just rather he could easily have lied and gone out on the made up an excuse on the spot as to how they inventory the cars and oh yeah, all our cars are here, but no, he just panics and just flees the scene because he's an idiot.
Well, and I think that that's the sort of characterization that draws out a story and makes it more interesting. And I think that one of the things, and as I think we said, Frances McDormand won the Oscar for Best Supporting or Best Actress?
Actress lead.
And deservedly so. It does show her vulnerability, although having a pregnant police chief is vulnerable enough. And that in unto itself is a bizarre situation, a character to follow, being our protagonist. But it does show her in a vulnerable position with Mike, as he is obviously manipulating the situation to try and be with Margie. Oh, I saw you on the news there, and I just remembered you were a super nice lady, and I thought we could hang out. And she's amicable to it, but also it does build up her resolve against the bullshit around her, if you'll pardon my Minnesotan, is that she's like, no, I think I'd like it better if you sat over there. I'd prefer that.
Mm.
And so she does assert herself. And yeah, you're right. When she does talk to her friend on the phone and say, oh, yeah, no, Mike was going through a hard time. And then she finds out that the entire interaction was bullshit. And she goes, well, then maybe I'll go check out this other thing that kind of smelled of bullshit. And she lays out exactly why she returns when she does go back, because she says, it's kind of weird that the car that we are looking for is from your lot, and the guy who we are looking for as well is one of your mechanics. And so it's a logical progression.
Yeah, and so and that's how it kind of pieces back in. But I like also that it serves that purpose of further characterization of just her and the people around, and that whole culture, which you don't again get a ton of in other movies, where every scene has to move the plot forward in a significant manner. Whereas with the Mike Yanagita scene, they let it linger for quite a while before they come back to its relevance, which is what I liked about it. Whereas with Jerry, admittedly with Jerry, you don't really check in with him much other than when it's necessary. And I found it surprising that the father-in-law and his other partner were listening to Jerry about keeping the cops out of this. I thought, because his father-in-law said the right thing. He's like, no, anytime somebody says there's no cops, it's because they don't have a handle on it and would be arrested almost immediately. But he still goes along with it anyhow. But then he's kind of a dick when he wants to undersell it. Maybe we should just give him 500 instead of $1 million. And then Jerry's like, whoa. So it's like, yeah, the father-in-law is right that Jerry's an idiot and his wife's probably an idiot for marrying him. But at the same time, he's underselling. He's not going to go to the cops. And he wants to underpay the kidnappers and kind of, mess around with them and not, meet the demand.
Black Philip Alvarez is here and says, never seen this before, but I did pre-order the 4K from Shout Factory that comes out next month.
Oh,
so
nice.
There's your answer. Thanks, Phil.
There's the answer. Yes, good. But that's crazy that, given the state of physical media, that a big Oscar winner like that is getting treatment by Shout Factory instead of. I mean, it is. I guess because it's a smaller studios, but I would imagine they've put out physical media before. Maybe that's not. Maybe not.
Who's the studio that put out your Blu-ray? I think the one that put out my DVD was MGM.
That's right. Yes, you're right. It is MGM. Yeah, so it's MGM. So they should be.
So it'd be an Amazon. Maybe Amazon's just maybe they're just farming out their library.
It's crazy to think it's Amazon. They'd have the money.
Well, but it's not their business. Making stuff is not their business. Distributing stuff is their business. Pleasant Valley Picker says, anyone remember Stanley Kubrick's film The Killing? There's a classic heist film that goes wrong at the end. I love The Killing.
Yeah, I have the Criterion Blu-ray over there on the coffee table.
Always showing off. Jesus.
Well, I'm not going to go over and grab it. If it was still on the shelf, I would grab it. It's got an awesome cover, by the way, with the clown walking in the dark in the rain.
That's that's an amazing crime thriller. I do enjoy that, especially Sterling Hayden and Elijah Cook, I think. And
yeah,
super. Irene says, sorry, I'm fangirling again. I'm assuming that that's in regards to Kat.
I didn't see what posts for. I'm not looking at the comments. So.
Oh no, I'm going through and I'm picking and choosing. I don't know if I'm doing it correctly, but I'm having a blast.
Right, unless I saw the comments. So.
And stay the course. Hello, stay the course. Anyway, but this is also, and part of the reason why we're doing this is in terms of the film review, and I do want to keep talking about the movie, is that the 5th season of Fargo is going to be coming out on like what, the 21st of November?
Yeah, November 21st through January 16th.
And so it's interesting. I'm familiar with it. I've seen some episodes, not a lot. And we're going to be doing season 1 after this to prepare for season 5. It's an anthology show. We don't have to go in order, so it's great. But I'm interested to see the parallels of, like you said, the Mike Yanagita scenes in the show, because I've seen, as I mentioned, part of the shows, and it is very character driven and very interesting and paced, and so it's. I think it'll be a blast. But anyway, the movie that we are discussing currently.
Yeah, I really like the parking garage scene, because when I thought that was probably the tensest moment, is the lead up to that, when Carl calls Jerry at home and the father-in-law picks up the phone in the back to listen in, and Jerry knows he's listening in, and I'm thinking, oh shit, Carl's going to say something to give away the fact that Jerry's in on this, isn't he? And surprisingly, he doesn't. And so I'm like, oh, okay, so he got away with it. But then Jerry decides, instead of following the father-in-law immediately, he waits a while before going. And so by the time he gets there, we find that the father-in-law and Carl have shot each other. The father-in-law is dead, and Carl has been shot in the side of the mouth, and he's speeding off down the parking garage. And rather than just smashing through the cheap little gate thing, which would have been easier, he decides to stop and talk to the super chipper ticket taker. Open the damn gate, and then shoots him dead off screen. And Jerry is still surprised by this after hearing that these bozos have already killed 3 people.
But that's something that I like. Again, it's an infusion of character, because there is an argument that he has earlier with a parking lot attendant, and he's like, yeah, I decided not to park here because he was just there to steal license plates so that he didn't have the dealer tags on the stolen vehicle anymore. And he just says, I just want to go. And it's like, well, it's going to be $4. We have a flat rate. I can't open the gate without the flat rate. And so it's like a buildup of, come on, I didn't do anything. I haven't used your services, but you think you're an important person. Fuck you. And that's it. It sort of comes back around in that interaction where it's like, well, we're gonna have to charge you, and it's like, I will, just open the fucking gate.
Well, it's not even the same guy either. It's a different.
No, not even.
Yeah, and he's gonna shoot. That's like, I'm like how parking garages are, though. Once you go inside, you can't get out unless you pay the fee.
Right.
Unless you go to the seemingly telepathic one, which I go to frequently, which seems to know when I'm coming, and then it opens before I even get the ticket in the scanner. But I don't know
how that works. I don't know. I can make so many jokes.
But I like when Carl gets back and he finds that Gower, Grimsrud or whatever, Peter Stormare has killed the victim who they're supposed to be keeping alive. Like, she makes too much noise, blah, blah, blah. And Carl doesn't care about that. He's actually kind of cool with it. And he's like, okay, we're going to split the money. And he of course, has the $1 million, but he buried it, other than the $40,000. He took the $80,000 out, and he buried the rest. And they make a point of showing that he's really in the middle of nowhere, and he looks to the left, and he looks to the right, and it's like there's nothing to demark this barbed wire fence. And so he takes the ice shaver and sticks it in there. And I'm thinking, that ice shaver is way too small and short that the next snowfall, it's going to be buried and it's gone, But he decides to do that anyway. And so he takes the $80,000 there and decides, okay, I'm going to split half with you, and I'm taking the car that Jerry gave us, and you can keep my truck because it's probably a hot car by this time anyway. To which Gower's like, no, we'll split the car. It's like, how the fuck do we split a car? It's like, one of us chainsaw. It's like, one of us. It's like, I'm the one who got shot, and I'm going to go kill. I'm pissed off. I'm taking it. And I think he probably would have let him take it. But when he said he was going to go kill his friend, Chef.
Yeah. When he said that,
it's like, it's not so much that he's just looking out for his friend. He sees that they've kind of fucked up so many times. That it's like, do I really trust this guy to do that? No, he's going to fuck this up and we're all going to get turned in and this is the end of it. So he just runs outside with his hat and his axe and his and just whacks the guy in the neck, killing him. And Marge, meanwhile, who's been investigating, and she gets there's a random tip from a guy who says, yeah, there was this funny looking guy. He came down here and got all belligerent with me and threatened to kill me like this other jerk or whatever. It might have been nothing. And told the cop that, oh, you might want to go to Moose Lake to check it out. And because that tip was kind of floating in the ether, Marge puts it together when she sees the car when she's driving by Moose Lake, and she goes there, finds Mrs. Lundegaard dead in the kitchen, and she goes around the back where we hear the wood chipper, and it's so loud that he can't hear her there telling him to stop. And we see that the great visual too, when you come around the corner, you see all the blood in the snow, and it takes a while to see what he's shoving in, but we already know what it is. And then we see Carl's legs sticking out, and finally Gower notices that Marge is there, and rather than running for the tree line, he sprints out across the frozen lake, and she shoots him in the back of the leg, takes him into custody relatively easily, and that's where she's just completely flabbergasted that, oh, you did all this. And at this time, they hadn't found the father-in-law yet. They just thought he was, missing. And they had since interviewed the partner who said, oh, yeah, we didn't call the cops because they told us not to. And so she's just driving along. Oh, you all did this for a little money. And there's more to life in the world than money, And doing the whole shtick, as it were. And he just doesn't say anything. He just kind of accepts it.
Well, he didn't say anything through the whole movie, so...
Right, he doesn't say anything.
He wasn't much of a conversationalist.
He mumbles barely at all, and that it's because he seemingly gets off the hook. That's why Steven Spielberg cast him in The Lost World and had him get ripped apart by compies, because he called that his character's punishment for Fargo, because he knew the audience would like that. That's a true story.
That is hilarious.
That is.
Well,
and so,
yeah.
So Carl's dead, Gareth's dead, and Jerry gets seized at a motel in his underwear and why he is still at the motel and brought in the middle of broad daylight. No, you keep driving. You don't stop at a motel. But okay.
And he's still in North Dakota. He's in Bismarck.
Yeah, he's right outside Bismarck. He hasn't gone, or he's crossed the border into the Bismarck is
South Dakota.
No, it's in North Dakota, but it's not close to Fargo. So he's driven quite a ways.
Okay.
But I would wonder, why would you stop at a motel? It's like, I remember driving cross country. We drove from Tennessee, from Memphis, Tennessee, all the way to the western border of Arkansas and Oklahoma in about 4 hours. Drove from Oklahoma City all the way to Albuquerque in like a day. Long distances that you could drive all the way across Texas in a day. So it's like, why is this guy barely driving across one relatively small Midwestern state and stopping? It's like, dude, keep going. And Jerry's an idiot. He doesn't think about these things. He's having a total breakdown when he's being arrested. And
I thought that was an absolutely glorious performance by William H. Macy in terms of the impotent, feral caterwauling of a man who has finally been snared. Like, it is animalistic in his I don't wanna. And he's having such a tantrum just for no reason. He is helpless. He is completely broken at that moment. His wife is dead. He has no money. He's lost the respect of his employment and his family. And speaking of his son, which I am about to bring up, what do you think of Scotty?
All right, so Scotty at first was...
He's the Polka King of Minnesota.
Yeah, and, typical teen kid, they're having these problems, whatever, but now he's orphaned because his grandpa's dead. Presumably there's no grandmother. If there was, they never mention it. We don't know if they have any other relatives, but... Okay, your mom's dead. Your dad's going to prison for a long time because it's bad enough that he had to put this whole thing in motion. She's going to get hit as like a RICO case, being, oh, you were in on it, so you're going to be part of the whole charges.
The only reason you bring up RICO is because you've seen The Dark Knight. Stop pretending to be a legal expert.
That was actually kind of another Fargo that comes back in another season of the show. But
okay.
And it was also in another case I just saw yesterday. It's kind of crazy. But anyway, he's going to go down for that. And so the kid, you don't really come. They don't. That's something the movie doesn't come back to either. The last time you see the kid is when he's really worried, asking his dad what do you think's going on with mom. He's like, "Oh, don't worry, they're probably not hurting her. They just want the money." And he's constantly reassuring himself that this is going to go well, even though there's all these signs that it's not. It's like you already tried to call this off once because you thought you were going to get a major financial windfall. Then you realize that wasn't going to happen. These people are dead. The kidnapper's pissed off, and your father-in-law is going there. Sure, he brought a gun, but so what, But they never revisit the kid. He just kind of, disappears in a sense from the story.
Well, even when they bring up little Scotty, it's like it's an afterthought to Jerry.
Yeah,
he's like, oh yeah, Scotty, and there's obviously a little bit like it. There's a scene early on where Jean, Jerry's wife, is mothering, like being a parent about what's going on, and you have to pay attention to your grades. You can't go out for football, and then the phone rings, and then Jerry comes home. And then Scotty is rebelling, like he's saying the F word. And obviously Jerry is an absentee father figure. It's an interesting, again, character dynamic that happens with the Lundergards. And what's her name? I have it right in front of me. Kristen Rudrud plays Jean Lundergard. I don't know why she's so nervous throughout the film. She's either chopping like vegetables or knitting, but she's always on the edge of her seat. I don't know. I have a thing in the back of my head that says she's like on meth or something. Like there is something that is keeping her as a modern housewife, and she's doing an okay job. She's holding it together, but maybe they have money problems. It's never alluded to, but the characterization of that character of Jean, and I was always like, this is why I don't think I had seen it from front to back, is because I was like, you know what? I don't know what happens to Jean. And then when she died, I was so upset. I was like, oh no, she was so innocent. She had nothing. She didn't do anything.
Well, that was something that also happens off screen.
Yes. It reminded me of, and we've done the Bullets, Blades, and Babes with Tarantino, and we talked about Dusk Till Dawn, and I was thinking about like Seth Gecko coming back and seeing that Richie had killed that woman, the hostage from the bank, and it's like, why is she dead? Why did you have to do that? And so it was that kind of, oh, this is what happens. All right, so she started screeching, and Peter Stormare decided to fucking plug her. That's extreme.
Well, yeah, and Carl has no reaction to it. It's like, oh, okay.
All right.
And then, and for that matter, going back to the son for a second, Jerry, when he flees, he doesn't take his son with him. He just kind of doesn't even think about that. He just, takes off. Then a very interesting kind of, I get why they say it feels very real in that sense, because you don't have the big dramatic climax. It's sort of dumb luck that Marge happens upon the villain's hideout, and dumb luck that Stormare is unarmed when she comes upon him and is able to shoot him. And just, I guess Carl's ending was a bit inevitable given he's a total fuck up. And I find it ironic that he keeps getting mad at everybody for not keeping things simple, and yet he's the one who keeps exacerbating things. It's like, well, you killed the guy at the ransom demand rather than just exchanging the money, because you obviously didn't keep up your end. You kept telling him to bring the money and you didn't bring the wife. You then you go mouthing off to this random guy at the store and let loose that you're at Moose Lake because he's able to, because the guy's local. He's able to piece that together.
Okay, so the plan, according to Jerry and agreed upon with Carl, is, and let's not forget, Carl gave very simple instructions.
He did.
It has to be Jerry. Jerry has to have the bucket of money so that he can take the $700 or the $920 billion, whatever, however much money it is. He's got to get like the amount of money from the dad. Then he's got to take the money that he wants and then give the money to the Carl and Peter Stormare, and then assuming he'll get his wife. right?
Well, the deal is you got to get the money to get the wife back, and the way the father hears it seems reasonable because they're going to exchange it. It's like Jerry was not really, because you could tell from Jerry's extreme reaction to finding out that the three people were murdered and then seeing what's happening in the parking garage. He didn't ever expect this thing was going to escalate to murder. I don't think he wanted them to kill. He didn't want them to kill his wife. He wanted them to return the wife. So it stands to reason he would have shown up playing the role of the innocent husband and giving them the money, and he would have already deducted his half, obviously, and then they'd give the wife back. But Buscemi, of course, doesn't know that Jerry's not going to show up to the meet, but he didn't keep up his end because he didn't bring her there at all, because he's already decided that things have gotten so messed up and listening that he's already changing the rules. And who knows, like, for instance, if Jerry was the one who showed up instead of the father-in-law, and Jerry showed up with the money and the full 80,000 he demanded, what would have happened then? Is that the reason he didn't bring the wife? Because he had changed the terms and says, no, you're not giving me 40, you're giving me 100 or all 80 this time. So Carl's kind of playing fast and loose with it as well. And yet he keeps getting mad at how, like, you already killed 3 people, which is probably why he didn't care about the wife dying. It's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Because he figures he didn't get the money. Yeah, so that's kind of it. And so for the movie to not have her get the villain, so to speak, because she's had the most interactions with Jerry between all of them. And the Peter Stormare character, I think, is deliberately very vacant and very dead-eyed because they don't want it to feel like this big triumphant thing when she arrests him. It's just dumb luck. He just happened upon him. He's like, like there's definitely a few screws loose, low IQ type person here. Whereas Carl, the animated guy ends up getting killed by his partner, and that takes you by surprise. So I think it's the subversion of expectation and going against what you typically see in crime dramas that helped elevate the film.
There's an interesting shot that occurs about halfway, and Jean is kidnapped. Peter Stormare and Carl are in the safe house, and Carl is just beating the television like a rented mule because it doesn't get any signal because of the aerial. And aerial, children, is a way to receive television signals through the airwaves that was attached to old televisions before cable. And so the dead eyes that Peter Stormare's character has as he's sitting there watching Steve Buscemi's character beat the shit out of this television and not like break it, but like, give me a signal, come on. And he's working the antenna, and it zooms in and it just shows the deadness in Peter Stormare's character's eyes. And then as it zooms into the television with the static and snow on a television, children, is what used to happen when you couldn't get a signal on your old-timey television. As it draws back out, it shows a clear picture of a beetle eating. And then it flips over and you see who's watching it, and it's Marge. And she's just like there, bored, dead-eyed, watching television, but television works. And I thought that was interesting. I don't know what the conclusion of that is, but I just thought it was a fascinating sort of transition in terms of the filmmaking. Like those kind of, and it's a slow moment, even though there's a lot of hooting and hollering. But in terms of the filmmaking, I thought it was fascinating, and it really grabbed me.
Well, it's funny because I noticed that in that scene that they're watching like cheap soap operas and crap on TV, and one of them you see Bruce Campbell on playing an actor in one of the soap operas.
Hells yes.
She is just watching something about the very dull life cycle of a beetle, which feeds into her overall world philosophy of how she's fine with the routine and the simple and all that kind of stuff, thinking the best of everybody. And being a bit binary. Oh, you have a criminal record, so I'm going to grill you. Whereas, oh, you're respectable, so I'm just going to trust you 100% until that starts falling apart. But then you see other things that she's really sharp, like when she interviews the 2 call girls, and she keeps having it. It becomes like like a precocious kid who asks why a million times. She keeps asking these very pointed questions, but has to ask a million more to get them to understand like what, because these are really slow people here you're dealing with. Whereas the Stormare character, similarly, during the kidnapping, he actually pauses upstairs when he goes into the bathroom, and he lifts the ski mask up and looks at his reflection in the mirror, and he kind of just stares at himself for a bit, like he's, what the,
Well, okay, so but that's an interesting interaction in the kidnapping of Jean. is that Jean bites Peter Stormare's hand, and then he's like, I need ointment.
Mm.
And then Carl's like, what are you talking about? Ointment. And so he goes up to the bathroom, windows open, and he's just rifling through the thing. And so, yeah. And then when he closes the medicine cabinet with the mirror, I don't think he's staring at himself. I think he's like, oh shit, we didn't check the shower. And then she leaps out. Like, that's almost a jump scare, because you think, like, watching it, I am looking at it and I'm like, yeah, this is creepy. He's admiring himself. No, wait, what else? Oh, and it's like and then, Jean runs around, bumps into things, and falls down, which is her job in this movie.
Like when they arrive at the hideout and they're just both standing there watching her, and Carl's just laughing his ass off about it, and Peter Stormare just standing there looking kind of, like whatever.
It's so heartbreaking though, because I feel bad for Jean.
Yeah, I just found her to be kind of like she's playing the role of the hapless victim in this film.
True.
And like you said, she's married to a husband who doesn't really love her, whose motivations aren't exactly clear. We get the idea that he's bullied all the time by his father-in-law, but we don't get the sense that there's any problem like that at home. And he's just, whatever that's going on, and she's like trying to keep it together, I guess, even though she doesn't seem to think anything's wrong. And so, and all she does when she's tied up at the house is scream all the time, which is why I kind of was siding with Stormare's character a bit, where I could
come on.
I can see it. Yes, she's been kidnapped, but it's like, okay, you're tied up, you're kidnapped. It's like, you're not, you gotta wait for the next thing, so to speak. It's like he's getting annoyed. I'm pretty sure he just, trying to imagine how that went. Like, did he just have the gun sitting next to him? I assume he shot her, because they don't really show
they don't.
What her cause of death was specifically. And I noticed that the oven was still open.
Like, that was weird, right?
I think he probably left it open to heat up the house.
That makes sense.
And so, yeah.
The whole, like, it's tragically funny, and that's why I say it's a comedy of errors.
It is.
It's a bad plan by a dumb guy employing bad people that he cannot control, that is ultimately discovered and thwarted by a 7-month pregnant woman. Like, it's almost like low-tier crime. The title, Fargo, being North Dakota and being in the quote-unquote flyover states or Midwestern, you don't expect anything that intricate to take place. But that's the most engaging part of it, where you see, crime things and they're all slick and cool and, oh my God, it's Heat. It's Pulp Fiction. And this is just like, no, what happens if an idiot organizes a crime and dumb shit happens and it doesn't pay? And that is what the moral of the story is at the end for Marge. She's like, I just don't understand the level. I don't know. Just for a little bit of money, how many people are dead? Just for a little bit of money.
5, 6, I think. No, 7.
Although, speaking of the dead people, the dad, what's the name of the guy?
The actor was Harvey Presnell.
No, John Carroll Lynch is Norm. No, yeah. Norm Gunderson is Marge's husband.
Yes.
Who's the guy? Wade. Harv Presnell. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Wade is right.
When I was impressed that when he does get shot in the chest, there's no like squib of blood that comes out. It just absorbs into that coat.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that because there's no like glorification. There's no glorification of violence, says the guy who just watched a movie with a man and a wood chipper. Maybe I'm incorrect on that assessment. You can tell me later.
Yeah, there's not.
Like, the violence is sort of matter of fact.
Right, and that's kind of how it's always been in Coen Brothers films. That's the mantra of really much all their movies is crime doesn't pay. Mm-hmm. And you see, and all other movies, not just Fargo, sort of unfold in that type of truth is stranger than fiction type of way. That doesn't. It's not all wrapped up neatly. It's not. It's not really their style isn't so much defined as how they shoot it or direct it, so much as the types of turns the stories take. Like No Country for Old Men, for instance, is a movie where the three principal characters never meet face to face.
I thought that this was very comparable to No Country.
Yes, and Blood Simple, another simple plan that somebody's put together that goes horribly wrong. Except the difference here is that you have that whole Minnesota Nice culture aspect to it, which just felt very new for a lot of people because that you hadn't seen films. Nothing. It's not surprising that Hollywood wouldn't go to shoot films up there, really. So it's like, oh wow, you're like this is a thing. It's like new for a lot of people.
Well, and in terms of the environment, like I usually don't like watching winter movies in the winter because it's like it's cold outside. Why would I watch a movie on my TV that's cold? That's why I only watch Empire Strikes Back in the summer. But if it's and it is Roger Deakins doing the cinematography, he really conveys the cold atmosphere of the like I think it's gorgeous and you feel it. Like when Jerry is scraping his windshield and then just gets frustrated and starts beating it like a rented mule. Like the frustration of just being in that environment. I felt that. Like whenever like I'm Canadian, and so whenever it is winter like that and I have to scrape my my windshield, that is exactly how I feel every time. I think of William H. Macy every time I scrape my windshield.
Well, he's more frustrated in that scene because his father-in-law has just turned down his plan by only agreeing to give him a finder's fee.
But it's an added frustration, just the
yeah. That's also a reason why I'm never gonna move to cold. It's like I don't want to deal with all the snow and just the black ice and the how it freezes over the concrete in your car. Like no thanks. I'm no.
I am very much looking forward to being homeless in San Francisco. I have a tent and everything. I'm coming your way, baby.
Yeah, so you're right. The movie doesn't really glorify violence, but it's also the whole thing kind of unfolds in this kind of okay, how kind of meanders along again because it feels sort of the same at all three acts at any given time. So I'm not surprised that the film did get the big following that it did, and the script was very sharp for sure. I kind of wish I loved it more because I love the series as one of my favorite TV series ever. My top 3 or top 5 for sure of all time. Because you get to spend a lot more time with the characters, and so there's a lot more twists and turns in the plot. This one, while it does have a nice lean runtime, every scene in it, except for maybe the Mike Yanagita scene at first, is like why why everything's happening, why it's going. It's kind of ho hum. Whereas the TV series each season, I feel the tension and suspense just keeps building and building, and just get more like really reeled into it even more excitedly because those series don't just take place in the Fargo movie universe, but they also borrow extensively from the other Coen Brothers films and certain motifs and scenes, and you'll pick up on when you're watching it. But this movie, again, I wish I loved it more, but I still enjoy it.
Well, and I wouldn't. I don't like this movie better than The Godfather, but I do really appreciate it. It is one of those 90s movies when you think about the rise of the Coen brothers and their contemporaries. This is a really good movie. A question that I had, 2 questions that I had. The first one was, is this movie better than The Big Lebowski? And my answer, no.
No. Yeah, I agree. No.
But also, my second question is, you brought up the 3-act structure. And my second question is, do the Coen brothers, do they have a 3-act structure, or do they make their movies in the same way as a novel tells its story? I don't feel like I have to phrase this as a question. Do you watch a Coen Brothers movie and identify when things are happening, or do you just watch a Coen Brothers movie and then it ends?
Right. It kind of, you're right. It kind of just ends. I mean, if you're
Same
still
as No
following,
Country, same as The Big Lebowski. And also, like, the money in Fargo, it's just buried out there with the ice scraper. Like with No Country for Old Men, it's Tommy Lee Jones saying, "I had a dream this one time." With Lebowski, no one, he doesn't even get his carpet. He doesn't get the rug. Like,
well, in No
it's a
Country,
story about characters that
and
doesn't come to a crescendo.
well,
It seems like
I
slice of life.
in No Country, the money does get delivered to the guys who he was hired to give it to, the bad guy.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They just don't show that on screen. It is in the book though. That
Well,
one I thought did have a crescendo. It was just different, but that one's slightly different because the Coens didn't write that. I mean, they wrote the script, but it was a very faithful adaptation of the novel, which I've read by Cormac McCarthy.
mhm.
So that's a slight difference there. But yeah, for the most part, like the Big Lebowski, you're right. He doesn't get the carpet back, but it still feels like there's a conclusion there. They solve the mystery, and then they end up back at the bowling alley, and you have the climax, so to speak. You find out what's actually been going on, and that they've been, blackmailed by the nihilists, so to speak. And so there is a conclusion. I thought there was more of a satisfying conclusion there. It didn't feel like it kind of ended per se. Granted, this one I can identify that the story is coming to an end because the characters have been arrested or whatever. But I did expect, probably in my first viewing, that there would have been a follow-up scene, either Jerry being interrogated and having a further breakdown, or the discovery of the father-in-law's body by the police at the parking garage, or maybe Marge having another showdown with Jerry now that he's arrested and bringing up, oh, what about your son? You didn't think about that, or something. It just kind of, again, it just kind of, oh, okay. It's just like Jerry got caught by somebody else, and one of the bad guys has been killed. The wife's been killed. So I guess the story's over now. Which is why I didn't feel like it was crescendoing, say, in a similar fashion. Whereas No Country, that's one of my top 5 films all time, probably.
Wow.
But for different reasons.
I'm
Whereas
sure.
this, yeah, I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because I just didn't, at the time I watched the first season of the show, I didn't remember the movie well enough. I had to go back and watch it, and then it just didn't seem as impressive compared to because the Coen brothers are executive producers, I believe, on the TV series. Like, they gave their blessing to it, and they get creative consultants because it takes place in that same universe. But I don't know if they're I don't think they're very hands-on with that show, because that show's actually shot in Canada, in Alberta.
Makes
Whereas
sense.
this one, I believe, actually did shoot in Minnesota. But yeah, I get why. I think it's mostly because they introduced the whole Minnesota nice culture to the world at large, that this gets a lot of attention, or at the time. And the fact that it does break narrative conventions and gives itself permission to, by saying it's a true story. And it's pre-internet age, by the way, so which is why they got away with it too, because otherwise that would have been debunked within 5 minutes. Same with Blair Witch Project. Oh, this is a real thing. It's a real found footage. And that I
Yeah.
was surprised by how many people assumed that was real. Even as an 11-year-old, I had the wherewithal to know that, well, obviously it's not real, or it would be in an evidence locker somewhere. They're not going to release, a major studio isn't going to release that in a movie theater. But there were a lot of dumb people back then, I remember, who genuinely believed that it was real. I couldn't believe it. And
There are
so,
still a lot of dumb people right now.
oh, that's for sure. But I think that helps elevate it as well. The people who falsely believed it was real. The fact that, I think it's, again, a commentary that, like I mentioned, nobody in my circles or in middle class, whatever, were talking about Seven, which was shocking and grotesque and dark and
Oh my God.
But every one of those people were talking about the wood chipper scene in Fargo all the time, and how crazy like talking about that stuff like it was a big deal. I'm like, okay, it's a good scene, but is it really that much darker or shocking than, like, again, it's like it tells you what certain people or certain classes of people are watching.
Can I tell you a quick story about Seven?
Yeah.
So I went to go see Seven in London, Ontario. And I saw it at I think it was like the 9:00 show in the theater. And there were 3 women, probably in their mid 50s to early 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And they were obviously there to see Brad Pitt, because before that, it was Legends of the Fall Brad Pitt. And so they went to the Brad Pitt movie. And then they were confronted with a knife dildo, and there was audible sobbing in the theater of what these women had been exposed to, and all they wanted was to go and see the latest issue of the People magazine Beefcake. And they were blown away by the violence and horrific imagery that they were confronted with. It was amazing. It was one of my favorite theater going experiences.
You see, that's exactly the thing. It's like nobody was talking about that movie, again, in the circles I was in, middle class, all that kind of stuff, but all of them were talking about Fargo. And it's like, well, yeah, because Fargo is a very, the setting and everything is a very conservative, middle class kind of, everything's, morals are very clearly established type of thing, even though it's very different. But but again, since I didn't really get to watch this movie until years later, by which point I'd already seen Seven and all sorts of other horrible things, I started thinking about it, like, why aren't people talking about that? It's like, oh, that kind of gives you a clue as to what they're watching and why they're watching it. Yeah, so like for
But
instance,
I like it.
oh yeah,
What would you? How many?
for instance, I know John Carroll Lynch from a bunch of other movies. Primarily Zodiac will be the first that comes to mind. My parents and other people like him. The first thing they'll say is Fargo, even though he's got barely 3 scenes in it, and is just so muted the whole time. But I've seen him so much more animated, really great character actor, and all sorts of things since then, right? But others will still talk about Fargo, and that's that was 27 years ago now. But yeah,
well, I remember John Carroll Lynch from the Drew Carey Show. Oddly enough, he played Drew Carey's brother, cross-dressing brother, transvestite, trans man, trans woman. I'm not sure, but yeah, no, I remember John Carroll Lynch from that, and he is absolutely a lot. Again, these are a lot of amazing. Who's the guy who plays like the partner to Wade Gustafson? Like, I've seen his pockmarked face on so many shows as just a character actor who shows up. He's great.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think, again, casting is interesting. I'm a big fan of Steve Park as Mikey on Nagita.
Yeah.
Like, I thought he sold that.
Yeah.
Like, it's an incredible, with great performances. Of course, with a bullet, it goes to Frances McDormand. Just vulnerable and assertive at the same time. I thought she was great.
So what do we rate these on? Moneybags?
Paul Bunyan. How many Paul Bunyans?
Ooh, out of 10. You go first.
Well, this is going to set the stage for our continuing reviews of the Fargos. But like, I'm not out of 10. I'm going to give it out of 5.
Well, we always rate out of 10.
Then let's do 10. Fine. Stop yelling at me. Stop being a big blue ox. It is the movie that started it all. It is with an Academy Award winning performance. I am going to give 1996's Fargo 9 out of 10. This is a movie I'm going to watch again.
I'm going to give it 7 out of 10. Because I don't take legacy into account or awards. I like just the movie itself. Did I like the movie? Did I enjoy it? And I enjoyed it enough that, yeah, I watch it again, but it's not something I would revisit very often. It's cool that Shout Factory's putting out a 4K. I don't know if I would bother with it because, I mean, unless I don't imagine they would do a ton of bonus features on it. I'd be curious as to what they would be, so I might check that out.
I'm curious about
looking it up. But
I'm curious about the Roger Deakins commentary on the Blu-ray that you have.
Yes, I haven't actually listened to that yet because it's good cinematography and a lot of the angles and stuff are kind of interesting the way he shoots it, but obviously it doesn't look as luscious as his more recent stuff of the last 10, 15 years, but it's still good. And certainly with the recognition of the film, gets more name recognition for him, which is good. But even 7 out of 10, almost considering what ratings I'm going to be giving these other seasons, makes me want to rate it almost lower to compare it. But no, 7 out of 10. I think.
Well, and that's the thing, is that you have more experience with the television show than I do, but I also want to give it the credit that it is deserved based on spawning the sort of spiritual series that continues the story of Fargo. Like I want to see the entire series of season 1, which is what we're doing next. We're going to do the Obi-Wan Kenobi twins before we get.
That's season 3.
Oh, what's season 1? Who's in season 1? Because we're going to do that. But anyway, before we get to before we anticipate that, what I'm saying is that the movie, I think, is a good movie of the 90s. If you are a fan of 90s cinema, especially 90s crime cinema, you should see it. The performances are exceptional. The people that you see in it, if you just want to flip through it like a People magazine, great time. And I want to give it the credit as being the beginning of the Fargo universe.
Yes.
So I'm giving it a 9. I'm giving it a 9. I'm standing by it, and I think you're wrong, and I think you're underappreciating Fargo, Cat.
I'm not.
All right.
I give it.
Yeah, I didn't make it. I don't care.
I give it a 7.
All right. All right. I'll give it an 8. You feel happy that I dropped a whole
You don't have to do that, but let's see. Is there anybody?
I don't have to.
Are there any other comments tonight?
No. Everyone left. There's no one watching. We're good. What do you?
That's right.
So anyway, what are we doing? What are we doing? Next season is season 1. What is happening in season 1 of Fargo?
We have Martin Freeman as insurance salesman Lester Nygaard.
Oh, is this the one with Billy Bob Thornton?
It is Billy Bob Thornton as Lorne Malvo, aka Forlorn Malevolence.
Amazing. Never seen it. This is great.
And Colin Hanks as a sheriff's deputy.
I do like Colin Hanks.
And then
how many episodes?
10.
10 episodes?
So we'll do 2 at a time so we can get it done in 5 weeks, because it'll be 6 weeks. And then we'll go back to doing, I suppose, 1 episode a week. Well, it'll be 2 a week for the premiere of season 5, and then after that, it'll be 1 each week.
Yeah. Well, and also, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up why this came to fruition and why you were so gracious and lovely to suggest this as a conversation that we can have once a week, every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific and 10 p.m. Eastern. Who's going to be in season 5, Kat?
John Hamm.
Fucking yeah! So I would be an absolute. I love John Hamm, and I mean that platonically. Absolutely, you stay clothed. But and John Hamm, if you're listening to this, if you'd like to be on our season finale review, please get in touch. It would make me happy. But yeah, so yeah, we're covering this Fargo. I think this is sort of the training wheels for other conversations that we've discussed having, because we do want to do a true crime thing where you describe true crime to me and I go, what shit, that is crazy. And so this is sort of me in preparation for how to talk about true crime. So I appreciate you hand-holding me through this experience.
Of course.
Is there anything that you want? Are we done? We're done?
I think so.
You want to promote anything? You want to say anything to anybody?
I don't think there's anything else to promote. I just finished reviewing the Ahsoka series 2 episodes at a time on the Network with RM, and I got Unifying Force every second and fourth Sunday of the month. No longer live stream, but it drops at 8 a.m. Pacific on the Virtual Cantina Network YouTube channel. There was quite a fun episode. Latest episode was quite funny because it was just me and my co-host Dave, and we were talking about. Long story short, we got into talking about Dallas, and the conversation came up about who shot JR, and he told me the solution behind that, and I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about? That can't be the truth." He's like, "Yes, it is." I'm like, "Who the fuck approved that?"
Who did shoot JR? I don't know.
I don't. It's terrible, but
okay, I don't care.
But that was a funny. He was cracking up at my response to that because I had never known the solution. Yeah, there's that. But you can check those out if you want. But other than that, Scotty and I will be back every Thursday for the next 5 weeks, reviewing 2 episodes at a time of Fargo season 1. So yeah.
And also, as always, I would like to thank everyone who watched. If you're checking this out on the rerun, don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends, tell people that we're awesome or that you were worthy of derision. Stay the Course was here. Pleasant Valley Picker, and I wish him the best as always. Irene Jacobson, our number one, our most valuable player in the chat today. Thank you so much, Irene. And Black Philip Alvarez with the news update of the 4K of Fargo. I can't believe you're going to buy it. It's crazy. He's a hoarder. And I appreciate everyone who was here. And I would also like to say, please subscribe to Cinema Gulp. He does amazing stuff and breaks down not only movies, but also soundtracks. It's an incredible time. Go check out Anti-Derivative Jill, where I get to go and talk about Star Trek. That's a good time as well. And also, I have no link, but if you'd like to support Steve Foley's new endeavor, The Orchard, he is making a graphic novel called The Orchard. So please investigate that. I will give you no other clues. But that's it. I guess that's it.
All right.
Are we done?
Yeah.
I'm gonna. All right. I'm just gonna play this.